Was Seung's display a sign of things to come? Are Japanese women's doubles reclaiming their glory days? Is Viktor Axelsen back to his best? And what happened in the men's doubles final? All of this and more in this week's episode of Beckman's Breakdown, the show where I take a look at the World Tour events and major competitions and offer you my own humble opinion. This week was the India Open Super 750, and as you can tell from the questions at the start, there's plenty to talk about. So let's waste no more time and get right into it. So first of all, I want to talk about Dechapol Puvaranukroh. Dechapol, if you are unaware, is Thailand's top mixed doubles player and probably men's doubles player now. An absolutely phenomenal athlete. He is a former mixed doubles world champion. Now, the reason I want to talk about him is not because he did phenomenally well in the India Open. In fact, he lost in the second round of the mixed doubles and the quarterfinals of the men's doubles. No, the reason I want to talk about him is for that exact reason. He played in 2 events. And the fact that he is 27 years old, which isn't old, I will admit, but usually as players get into their later years, especially if they've been on the circuit as long as Dechapol has, they're usually going from one event and sticking with one event, or if they're playing 2 events, they move down to 1. We've seen that with numerous players that have been successful in both disciplines. Yuta Watanabe is a fantastic example. He is a former All England champion in both the mixed doubles and the men's doubles, yet these days only playing mixed doubles. And more recently than that, we've seen the Koreans, Seung and Kim Won-ho, go from 2 events, which they were both very successful at both, to now just playing the men's doubles. So the fact that Dechapol has basically done the opposite of that. He's gone from 1 event, only playing the mixed doubles for a large number of years, to now playing 2 events. It is incredible, I must admit, and also a little bit confusing on my behalf. That's not to say that I don't think he can do well in both. He is more than capable. Obviously, we know what his mixed doubles level is at. He won the Malaysia Open last week. And with Kedrin, they had a number of good results at the end of last year. And obviously a quarterfinal here, and they beat Alfian and Ardianto, the world number 4s in India. So that's the kind of level that he can play at. And obviously, Dechapol is an incredibly versatile player. He's a fantastic athlete. He's very strong physically. So I think when it comes to like the physical capabilities, playing 2 events is probably something that he can do. No, the reason why I'm a little bit confused is, oh yeah, of course, I just talked about physicality. It's still going to be a thing. An extra event does take out of you. Let's be honest here. There's no 2 ways around it. No, it's more the fact that when you're playing more than 1 event, that's going to split your training time, because obviously playing in mixed, the skills needed to be a mixed player and a men's doubles player there's some crossover, of course, but there's a lot of differences too. So by having to play 2 events, you are taking time away in your training, time that could be spent focusing on the skills purely for your 1 discipline. You're now spreading it across 2. Not only that, you're also spreading across time playing with your partner, training with your partner, developing all those kind of formations, that communication, that organisation. All of that does take time, and if you're training obviously in 2 events, you've got to split that time. And then obviously within a tournament, not just having to play an extra match, which can be physically draining no matter how strong you are, but also all the preparation that goes into a match, the tactical stuff, the video analysis, the analysing of your opponents. If you're playing 2 events, again, you've got to do that for 2 different things. So going into the men's doubles, going to take away from his mixed, which has already seen more success. And I also see Dechapol as more of a mixed doubles player anyway. That might be because the vast majority of his career has been in mixed, and he's been so successful in it that I'm a little bit kind of, that's influencing the way I'm thinking about him as a player. Because if I try to right now like think of him just in general forms, he could easily be a really good men's doubles player. But I think mixed is definitely, even with that being said, I do think mixed is where his true abilities lie, because of his speed laterally side to side, and just the way that he sets up rallies and the control and touch he's got. Yeah, of course that can cross over into men's doubles, but I think it really does suit mixed. Obviously it's his decision what he wants to do, and if he feels that he can do both events and still do really well, then obviously all the more. He's more than welcome to do that, of course, and I still think he can be successful. I still think we could see him achieving some great results in the men's doubles, but I do think personally that he is a better mixed player. His skill set is much more suited to that. Obviously all the years of playing mixed has built that even stronger, and he's got in him a partner in Supasara that I think has a lot of potential, more potential to do really well at the highest level than it is with Kedren, and that is not a knock on Kedren as a player. He's also really good. I do think he has some limitations at the highest level of men's doubles. I just think the ceiling is a little lower. I think the ceiling for Dechapol and Supasara as a pair in the mixed, I already said in my last video, I think they could be one of the pairs to be the next big four, and I still stand by that. I wouldn't say the same in the men's doubles, but we'll have to wait and see what happens there, whether this is a long-term thing, or is it just kind of being is he just playing men's doubles for a little bit of a period now, and then as we kind of get closer to LA, which Dechapon's going to be at the perfect age for, I think, personally, will he slowly taper off the men's and move back to just mixed? Who knows? One thing I will say, though, is it has been quite fun to talk about Dechapol. I joked about how he's done the opposite of 1 to 2 events, and I think people have been saying, well, why not jump into the singles? And I think he could actually be a pretty handy singles player as well. If you're a mixed doubles player at that level, you're going to be good at singles as well. And it kind of came up with this idea of, someone named it the Beckman's Cup, which, no, I don't think we should call it that, but an individual team competition where we get the best players in the world. They have to play with a partner of their choice each of the 3 events, and so obviously, you know, you win 2-1 or 3-0 or whatever, and you have the best players to see who is the best all-rounder in badminton. You know, obviously the obvious opponent for someone like Dechapol would be Seung. Obviously, you've got players like Yuta Watanabe. I think Kim Won-ho would be good. There's a number of them, let's be honest here. List them out below if you want players that you think could be fantastic in all 3. But yeah, no, I just wanted to finish this little section on that. It's been quite fun to talk about that. But yeah, no, personally, Dechapol, I think he should focus more on the mixed than the men's doubles, but that's not to say that he can't have great results in the men's doubles. Okay, so kind of sticking with mixed doubles theme, but this time looking at a European pair. It's been really, really good to see Tom Jekyll and Delphine Delroux showing more consistently the kind of level that we know they're all capable of. They are a fantastic pair, but in the build up to their home Olympics, which must have had a lot of pressure and expectations on their shoulders, they weren't able to deliver the kind of performances that we know they're capable of. But since those Olympics, their form has been steadily improving, and they've actually shown some really good consistent form. Obviously this week in India they got to the final and played an absolutely brilliant tournament, especially that semi-final against Chen Tangji and To Wei, one of the best pairs in the world right now. That was a pretty flawless performance. But on top of that, they also got the runner-up at the Kumamoto Masters, semi-final at the Hilo Open, and quarterfinals in Denmark Open last year, and last week, or 2 weeks ago, at the Malaysia Open. So with those set of results, they are sitting currently at number 12 in the world. I expect them to rise a little bit further. I think they're definitely a pair that should be in the top 10. And it's also, I think it's really great to see, not just because they are a good pair to watch. I enjoy watching them, and they bring that kind of classical European mixed doubles style, but they're also Europe's top pair, and there is currently no European pair inside the top 10 of the mixed doubles. Europe has had some really good pairs over the years, some really successful pairs. Obviously Denmark have produced a number of them. That there's no European pair in the top 10, I think, is something that should be changed, that I'd like to see. I'd like to see a European pair, because they just bring a different kind of style to the way the more the Asian pairs approach it. And I think with the way that Tom Jekyll and Delphine Delroux have been playing, they are more than capable. I think they will move back into the top 10, and that is fantastic to see. In terms of how they played this week in India, I've already said they had a really fantastic semi-final against Chen and To, but the final was a little bit disappointing. I felt that they could have done better. Obviously, they were up against the world number 2s, Zhang Zhengbang and Wei Yaxin. And the reason I think they could have done better is not just because of how they performed in the semi-finals, but that recently Wei Yaxin has been struggling. She looked definitely off. Last week in Malaysia, she was absolutely dominated at the front court by Supasara, who is obviously a phenomenal front court player. But Wei Yaxin really was just like well within her shell, and she wasn't playing particularly brilliantly all week in India. And in the final, she had moments. She is a fantastic player, but she looks vulnerable, and I don't think the French pair were able to expose that. I know there was something on Reddit, and Steen mentioned it, and I've seen it, is that why didn't the French pair flick more? That was something that Zheng Siwei and Wang Yaochong did absolutely perfectly in the semi-finals at the World Tour finals when they played this pair. So it was a real surprise that they weren't doing that, because even if we take Wei Yaxin's kind of current level out of the question, her rear court is definitely not something very strong. I think that's why she is a mixed player. She, bit of an odd technique personally from the back of the court, but she's wasn't as dominant there. Her defense looks a bit fragile, and her rear court also looked fragile. And I just don't think the French pair were able to expose that. I think a little bit like, when they played in the Kumamoto Masters, when I think they played Dechapol and Supasara there, where they kind of fell apart in that match was a bit similar to the final, as they got a little bit, I think, emotionally, they were playing a little bit too from adrenaline. They were hitting and playing with too much speed, and yeah, they can do that. Obviously, like I said, they're a great pair, and Tom is a very physical, strong, tall athlete, but being European, they're usually more successful when they look to play like with softer pace, laying into mid-court with no speed, that either the guy has to lift it up, or they have to try and push through, and it gives the French pair a little bit more time. And Delphine's actually very good at intercepting from those situations, not so good when it goes fast. And I think that they played with they lacked variation, and they played with too much pace in the final when it was countered a little bit easy. Whereas in the semi-final, they played a lot smarter, and they were playing with more the soft pushes and the blocks, the clip smashes, the slices, combined with the full power stuff. So it was a little bit of a shame that they weren't able to bring that kind of gameplay from the semis to the final. Maybe it was just, we're in a final now, and we played really well yesterday, and so they put more expectations on themselves. So moving forward, maybe this pair just needs to I think the way they're playing, they might put themselves into these positions more, just being able to control their emotions a little better in these bigger matches. But it's easier said than done, and like I said throughout this whole section, it's been great to see them back playing some consistent badminton, because they are a great pair, and it's great for Europe as well. Okay, so we're actually sticking with mixed doubles for a third section in a row, and that's because I want to talk about Ramadhanti, Indonesia's probably what you'd call top women's doubles player at the moment, has now been partnered with Dejan Ferdinandia in the mixed doubles. A very interesting and, dare I say it, exciting pair, but there are some obvious question marks, with the big one being, for me anyway, can Ramadhanti develop into a mixed doubles player? Is it something that Indonesia are looking to long term? I would say yes. Obviously, I believe, again, correct me if I'm wrong, always correct me if I'm wrong, but obviously Dejan was playing with Gloria Gloria Wijaya, and they were independent players, and obviously they've now split up, because I believe PBSI brought Dejan into the national team, and that's why now they're partnering, trying to find him a partner, because he's obviously Indonesia's top mixed player. So obviously they're trying to find him a good partner, and Ramadhanti is a good choice. She's a very skillful player. She's shown that she can deliver performances at the highest level with her former partner in the women's doubles at Prihani Rahayu. They obviously had some great results. Can that transition over into mixed? And for me, that's where there's a huge question mark, because a little bit like what I talked about Dechapol, playing two events, I've already spoken about that at length, the difficulties of doing two events, but also the differences between women's doubles, what the skills you need to be a good women's doubles player are really different to mixed doubles player, especially for the female player. And I remember in a match recently, Steen Pedersen talking about Toi Wei, the Malaysian female, who he said that what she has done so well is that she now looks like a mixed doubles player, whereas before she looked like a women's doubles player trying to play mixed. And so I think that Ramadhanti is in the same boat. And similarly, between the two players, Toi Wei is also another skillful player that have an abundant skill, great defense, good vision. Ramadhanti is the same. Whenever I first saw her play, I was definitely taken aback by her skill. She's got that kind of Indonesian style, very skillful, very relaxed. But transitioning into the mixed doubles might take some time. If you're wondering what the skills are, then obviously defense needs to get far stronger because you're up against male smashes, not just female smashes. Men's smashes tend to come with obviously far more power, far more steepness, far more variation, far more threat. The speed in mixed doubles is just far higher. There's no time to really relax and slow down. This is actually something that Arisa Igarashi, or Higashino as you might know her, has mentioned, because she's transitioned the other way from mixed doubles to women's doubles, that she said with mixed doubles you have to be on it, you have to be fast all the time, whereas in women's doubles there's chances to slow it down and to mix up the speeds. You don't really have that in mixed. Obviously the skills and the control from the front of the court, you can't relinquish it at all really in the mixed. Whereas in the women's doubles, obviously say you're second best at net, it's quite easy to go, okay, we'll lift it. Because, you know, the smashing, the attacking in the women's doubles is not as strong as, say, the mix. The threat isn't there. I've already mentioned that. But so in women's doubles, if you're second best, you tend to see pairs rarely challenge too often. You tend to see lifts. Whereas, obviously, in mixed doubles, that isn't a long-term solution. You might be able to get away with it from time to time. But generally, you want to kind of hold and pressure the net, and there are going to be more net battles. And also, if you are going to lift, you want to play it more, try and nudge it into the mid-court, all those kind of skills. So the kind of skill set from the front of the court is far different. On top of this, I feel like you must be able to finish more in mixed doubles. You can't just lay it off and keep going and keep going. If you kind of miss too many opportunities, then obviously the longer the rally goes on, the more chances are that you could lose your initiative. I feel like the really best female players in mixed doubles are able to not just be able to control the net and get the attack for their partner, but they are able to finish it there too. Obviously, you've got different scenarios that happen. There's no point me going into all of those, but the basic ones are you have to be able to play at a much more faster, more physical pace. Your defense needs to be far more solid. And I think the front court obviously is a big one for female players. And so can Ramadhanti be able to develop the skill? She's obviously I think she's more than capable of doing it. It's just whether she can. Another thing that people have been messaging me about, actually, because I did a post on this, and there were some concerns amongst Indonesian fans that Ramadhanti has a little bit of a history of injuries. So now the fact that she's going to be playing in 2 events, training for 2 events, is that going to be too much? And are we going to get an injury on our hands? Obviously, I hope not. I hope the Indonesian coaches are able to manage her workload sufficiently, are able to manage her tournament load as well, because if you're playing in 2 events, I do think she's probably going to have to play slightly less to mitigate that issue. But then, can you get away with that? It's going to be a balancing act, and one that's going to be very interesting. I do hope that she doesn't get obviously injured for obvious reasons. Don't want to see any injuries, but I also am seeing this from an Indonesian perspective. She is the best women's doubles player they've got, and potentially now could be the one they're looking to at the mixed doubles as well. So if she's injured, that would be a huge blow to the team. I think it's quite an interesting question as to why they're putting Ramadhanti into the mixed doubles. Obviously, the one answer would be that they see that she has potential. But obviously Indonesia have been searching for a really good mixed pair for a while now. We've seen a number of pairs that have kind of shown signs. We had Rayan and Lisa, and we've had Rinov and Minatri, I believe is her name. Sorry, I can't quite remember it, but 2 pairs that were very good. I believe, actually, all world junior champions in their own right. They haven't progressed. We obviously had... when I say haven't progressed to the level that maybe people were expecting. Another one would be Leo Rolly Conando. Obviously, he was a double world junior champion, but has focused more on men's doubles. Daniel Martin was a very good mixed player, and actually, hot take right here, I think he'd actually be better suited for mixed. I've always felt that his skills lie more in the mixed doubles than in the men's doubles. But that aside, I think that's why Indonesia are looking towards, they brought Dejan in, I hope that's correct, like I said, and partnered him with Ramadhanti. They're desperately trying to find a pair that can bring success, and I will end this by saying Dejan and Ramadhanti have a lot of potential to be very good. Whether they will, as you can probably tell, there's going to be a lot of factors involved. If Ramadhanti can stay injury-free, and if she can develop her skills to more favour mixed doubles, then I think there's a lot of potential in this pair, because I haven't spoken much about Dejan, but He's got a good, powerful hit. He's skillful, and he clearly looks like he works really hard. So love to hear your thoughts on what you think this pair can do, and what kind of hurdles do you think they're going to face on their journey. Okay, so one of the big questions I had for 2025 was, can Seung get back to her dominant ways? More specifically, can she do in 2025 what she did in 2023, where she reached like 13 finals and won 10 titles, was on course to beat Momota's record, but I think the knee injury she sustained at the Asian Games put a little bit of a... made it basically impossible for her to do. Obviously, she started 2025 incredibly strongly, back-to-back titles, one in Malaysia and now has won in India, and looked even stronger in India than she did in Malaysia. With these 2 wins, I think she's now become the most successful women's singles player in terms of doing the back-to-back title. I can't remember off the top of my head. I did at one point actually have a document with all the back-to-back titles in it, but I remember rightly from back then, she's added a few since then. She was, I think, joint top with like Tai Tzu Ying then, so I think she's clearly pulled ahead. I think it's a real ominous sign for the other women's singles players that I think Seung is looking highly motivated. She's looking injury-free. That knee is looking as sturdy as ever. We know she's got the taping on her thigh, but like I said last week, that isn't going to impact her as much as her knee. I think another thing that should be a little bit ominous for players is actually how she was playing. In Malaysia, she basically won by just being very steady, playing the game that kind of broke her into the top level in the singles. You know, the people compare her to Chen Long in that respect. You know, very, very good shot quality, incredibly steady defense, doesn't make many mistakes, and just basically wins by a war of attrition and mental pressure on her opponent, where they feel that they've got to play closer and closer to the lines until they start making mistakes. What Seung, I felt, did in the start of 2023, which was a big factor in her having such a successful year, was that she started to add layers of attack to that. You know, she started to be a little bit more aggressive, because a lot of people were saying, well, if she only relies on rallying and the physical side, there's going to come a point where that's going to be too taxing on her body. And she must have listened to that, because in 2023, I believe it was at the All England where I first noticed it, she was a little bit more proactive and definitely started to show her attack. When she then got injured, I felt that kind of disappeared a little bit. Maybe she didn't feel confident. You know, that was always in the back of her mind. What I saw in India was that was starting to come back. I started to see a little bit more of the kind of attacking Seung, adding that layer. She's not like, when I say that, I don't mean that she's suddenly all-out attack and playing all the kind of crazy skills and stuff like a player like Marin would do in terms of attacking style, or like Tai Tzu Ying or someone like that, but just adding that layer on top of her game. So she's got that incredibly good base game that kind of puts already enough pressure, but then when there's a kind of an opportunity, she's taking on the attack a little bit more, trying to put a bit more sting in her attack, trying to create and finish and win her own points rather than wait for her opponent's mistake. That is actually, I already compared her to Chen Long. That's something that Chen Long was absolutely amazing for. He's mainly known for his insane shot quality and, you know, physicality, and the fact that he never looks tired or out of position or out of balance. Seung has all those qualities, but Chen Long was also, we have to remember, had a very good attack, a very accurate attack, and when he used it, and he used it sparingly, it usually was to great effect. Seung is doing the same, and if she continues to develop that, and she stays injury-free, and she stays as motivated as she is, then it's very difficult to look ahead in 2025 and not see her win another World Championships, win another All England, win another 10 titles, possibly more, or, dare I say it, beat Momota's record of titles in a year, and possibly also become a player with the highest winning percentage of the year. Another thing that I think also is good thing to see is that Seung is not playing in Indonesia. Usually in the past she would play Malaysia, India, and then go back to Indonesia to play the Indonesia Masters. She is not playing in the Indonesia Masters, which shows that there's a little bit more of a, whether that's her decision or whether it's the coaches, we all know about the situation in Korea. I don't know who made that decision. Whoever did, it's a great one, because now they're prioritizing. She's played 2 events, she won 2 events. What's the point in playing a Super 500? She doesn't have to. not even under BRF ruling does she have to play it. So I think it's great that we're not seeing her there. And I also think that is also another sign that we could see her playing, winning, having a dominant year in 2025, is if she's taking rest and recovery and allowing her body to heal, and she's going to be more specific in the tournaments that she targets. Who's to say that she can't win every tournament that she plays? That sounds ridiculous to say, but for me, even something as simple as her not playing Indonesia Masters, on top of the way that she played and the way that she's won both tournaments, all those signs are pushing towards Seung having another dominant year in 2025. Can she be stopped? I'll answer that a little later in the video. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is the women's doubles. The women's doubles event. It's another week, another tournament, and the final was between two new pairs. So last week in Malaysia, it was between Zhang Shushan and Jai Fan, a relatively new pair, and Fukushima and Matsumoto, another relatively new pair. This week it was between Igarashi and Sakuramoto, another new pair, post-Olympic pair, and Kim Hee-jong and Kang Hee-yong, another new post-Olympic pair. So the women's doubles is clearly going in a bit of a change, a bit of a transition. Obviously, on top of this, the current Olympic champions, we're unsure whether they'll come back. Someone asked me about Chen Qingchen, just a quick side note. What I heard is that she's not she's not retired, she hasn't made any final plans, but she just wants to kind of explore other things. Dora the Explorer wants to explore some other things, so I think whether she comes back to badminton is not so sure. So yeah, no, women's doubles is going through a, I guess you could call it a transition phase, lots of new pairs. Obviously, those players, the ones from last week and this week, they're all made up of highly successful players with formal partnerships. The only one in women's doubles that isn't would be Igarashi. Obviously, she has been more known for her mixed doubles partnership with Yuta Watanabe. It was really good to watch these two pairs play. I've got differing opinions on both of them. I'll start with the Japanese pair. I'll be honest, I was a little bit unsure as to whether they would even make the A team in Japan, and that's not because of any sort of thoughts that they're not a good pair or not good players. Not that. It was just more, obviously, Japan have such strong depth that in women's doubles have so many good pairs that obviously to make it into the A team, to get an invite, I believe you have to make the semi-finals of the All Japan Championships. And I wasn't sure if they'd actually be able to do that because of the depth in Japan and them being a new pair, and obviously Igarashi having played more mixed doubles, whether it would take a bit of time to kind of adapt to women's doubles. But no, at that All Japan, they got to the final, so they're obviously in the A team, and then they've gone and proved the fact that they should be there by winning in India. For me, they're a really exciting pair. I think they bring a different dynamic to women's doubles. They're like something we haven't quite seen before. Obviously, Igarashi, as we know, plays a lot of jump smashes. She's obviously very exciting. You know, I think even in her mixed doubles, people were always highlighting her jump smashes in there. She kind of, I would say, was one of the, if not the first women's doubles player, or female player, to use the jump smash in the doubles events, and she brings that nicely over to the women's. And Sakuramoto is a very strong player, left-handed. I think her left-handedness and Igarashi's right-handedness, I think that is always a nice combination in doubles events. Igarashi is obviously great from the rear court. She can hold her own there, create a lot of chances, but obviously her mixed doubles specialities of being at the front allows her to be very good the front and the back. Sakuramoto is more of a rear court player as far as I can see. She's steady from the front, but she doesn't look as comfortable, and that's quite good. Obviously you can get her the front might be a slight weakness for the pair or an opening for other pairs, but she's not that bad that she is a complete letdown there. And obviously then if you're in that situation, Igarashi's at the back and she's got all the jump smashing and all that. There were a lot of really nice link-up plays I saw throughout the week from them. They're almost linking up like a men's doubles pair. And actually, this is something that seems to be progressing in women's doubles as a whole. Obviously, we've seen Chen Qingchen and Jai Fan dominate. They were always quite a physical pair. But obviously, the pair that's taken over from them, Lu Shengshu and Tan Ning, spoken about them a lot last year. They're bringing in this whole new level of physicality and power, jump smashes as well. It's somewhere where the women's doubles is going, and obviously Igarashi is able to do that as well. And Sakuramoto is very powerful, very fast, and they just link up really, really well. So I'm quite excited to see more of them. It will be interesting to see, I think, with all new pairs, and this goes for all disciplines, as they play more, and players and other coaches and other players get to see their gameplay more, and they get analysed more, maybe we'll start to see pairs being able to expose certain things. You could argue Lu Shengshu and Tan Ning are in that situation a little bit. They had such a great breakthrough, and last year was so good, and they looked like almost unstoppable, and then they've been beaten in the last 2 tournaments by new pairs. Maybe they've kind of been somewhat figured out a little bit. It's just what you expect. So all these new pairs that we saw last week and now this week is going to be interesting. Give it another 6 months, maybe another year. Are we going to see other pairs be able to kind of figure out what works best against them? For me, with Igarashi and Sakuramoto, it's difficult, but definitely Sakuramoto at the net is definitely somewhere that I think could be exploited. As far as the Korean pair are concerned, obviously I've spoken a lot recently about the new Korean men's pairs. I haven't really watched too much of the women's pairs. And for me, with this new pair of Kim Hee-jong and Kang Hee-young, I'm still unsure. They got to the final. They had a great week, obviously. But there's something about them, when I watch them, I'm not quite sure they team up so well. For me, Kang Hee-young is a very explosive and fast and attacking Korean style player. And I think with her former partner, another Kim, who was taller and kind of like slimmer, she wasn't as explosive as Kang, but she was very, very fast and nimble. And they kind of were able to play a very quick and rotative game. Whereas Kim Hee-jong is much more like, she's shorter. She's even shorter than Kang. Very steady. Very good player, don't get me wrong, but doesn't play in the same sort of way as Kang. So I feel like, it's a bit of a contrast. You've got Kang, who's very explosive and powerful and solid and looking to attack more. And then you've got Kim, who's actually a very good front court player. Watching her, I actually felt maybe she could be a pretty decent mixed player, actually. But much slower, take that with a pinch of salt, what I say there, but like a much more steady player. And I'm not sure whether those two, it marries up particularly well. So yeah, no, I think obviously, of course, individually, they're both very good, but together, I'm still uncertain. Even though they got to the final here, I think we'll have to see more time. Maybe they will start to kind of adjust to themselves. They're obviously still going to produce great results. Like I said, they're both individually very good, very experienced. They're more than capable of being very good in the world. We're going to see them they're going to be a top 10 pair, but I'm not so sure together they go as well as maybe the Korean coaches might think. I don't know. There's something about it. Like I said, I think their styles contrast a bit too much. Their approach. It's going to be interesting to see what sorts of approach do they settle on to go forward. But, okay, women's doubles is definitely in a time of transition, and I'll be keeping an eye on both these pairs. I think I'm more excited about the Japanese pair. I think they've got real potential just by the way they played. They've got a clear, whereas I thought maybe like Kim and Kang, there's that uncertainty. I was watching them like, how these two, what's the style, what approach are they going to use? Are they going to be attacking, or are they going to be just really solid, really basic, or can they find a way that actually marries up well? I don't know. There's something just, I can't quite put my finger on it right now, but there's something about the way that they play that I'm not so sure. Whereas with the Japanese pair of Sakuramoto and Igarashi, I can see their style. It's very fast, very powerful, very like almost men's doubles-y. They work equally pretty well in both ways, and being right left-handed, they're already kind of setting themselves up with the kind of cross forehand to forehand kind of combination. So I can see a clear, definitive style that they've got, and I think that was why they were able to win that match actually. And so yeah, just a little bit more excited, if I'm honest, about that Japanese pair. I think they've got a little bit more potential, but that's not to say that the Koreans, can't do well. I'm uncertain right now. Okay, so from the Indy Open finals, the final that's got a lot of attention for obvious reasons, for multiple reasons, was the men's doubles. I think that's because, obviously, whenever a Malaysian pair wins, in this case it was Gozafei and Nur Izzuddin, a pair that have actually been doing really well and established themselves as one of the best pairs in the world, they won. That always gets attention. And also the fact that the opponents that they beat were Kim Won-ho and Seo Seung-jae, the pair that have just recently reformed their partnership, won in Malaysia in very convincing fashion, and then were able to reach the final here. So they were on a kind of 9-match unbeaten streak. And, you know, I spoke last week about how they could be a dominant pair in the men's doubles discipline. I still kind of stand by that. They've got all the attributes, all the skills required. Obviously, the fact that they were defeated, it just added to this. You know, there's been a lot of talk about their final and what happened. It's thrown up a lot of different questions, a lot of them that will come in the Q&A section later. For me, watching this match, I think the conditions in the hall, they were changing a lot throughout the week. Some days they looked like barely any wind, relatively slow. Then some weeks it looked more windy and faster. I don't know what was going on. But on finals day, it definitely was a little bit quicker. There were times where any player would look like they barely touched it and it would fly out the back. And I do think that those conditions definitely favoured the Malaysians. They play with they self-admittedly have been heavily influenced by the daddies, Mohamed Hassan and Hendrik Setiawan. And I think if I was to go a step further, they've obviously been influenced by Indonesian style in general, where it's a lot more high risk kind of style, where they kind of are willing to go for things a little bit more. You know, take chances. If it doesn't come off, okay, we'll go for the next rally. And that kind of style can obviously, it brings with it a lot of reward. If it's all working, it can be absolutely brilliant to watch. But like I said, it comes with a lot of risk. And there have been times where if one of the two, if Go or Nur, isn't having quite a good day and they're missing a few, that it can be to their detriment. In this final, it was, as the match was progressing, it was a little bit, you know, it was working and it wasn't. It kind of was fluctuating in and out. And I think that was obviously an endy thing. And so obviously both pairs split the opening games. And I felt that the third game, as I was watching it, I felt that luck might play a bit of a key. When I say luck, you know, obviously players and pairs, especially Go and Nur, they make their own luck. You know, they take the risky shots. They go for things, you know, whether it's on defense, they try to drive one, or they're looking for the interception, all that kind of stuff. They're playing with much more, like I said, with more risk. And so I felt that a little bit of luck on their side, you know, whether they get a net cord here or there or, you know, whatever, is going to play a part. Because if it wasn't on their side, if you combine that with the Koreans' much more solid approach to it, I think that could wear them down and could lead to Go and Nur losing it. We've seen it before when they've played Kim Astrup and Anders Rasmussen, another what I'd call very steady pair that are also able to be quite creative when they want to, especially Kim Astrup. Go and Nur have struggled a little bit against them. And so I felt that against the Koreans, that might be, especially with the way the Koreans have been playing, how they generally play as a whole. So yeah, no, I think it was luck a little bit. Obviously, luck plays a role in anyone winning. You know, you get like opponent missing a shot, hitting a net cord, rolling out, or you do a diving save, or something comes, whatever happens. There's a few of that for both sides, to be honest. But I think more than that, I think Go and Nur were playing with, and this is actually something I noticed throughout the week, far more intensity and focus than compared to Malaysia. I think in Malaysia, the pressure of playing on home soil got to them. They froze in a way and had a terrible first round loss. But in India, they were looking to make amends and they played far more free. And in the final, they were playing with all the variety that, you know, you expect from a pair that, you know, like I said, their influence was the daddies and you know, that kind of Indonesian style, and they were showing it in full form. There was a lot of variety in pace, in attack, both from the front court, in the rear court, in defense, everywhere. There was a lot of variety of angles, pace, and also they weren't making as many mistakes as I sometimes see, especially Nur Izzuddin. Sometimes he's someone that can just kind of go off the boil. They're strongest when obviously goes at the front, Nur's at the back. And they work very well from there, and they were working really well in this final from there. But when they're in the opposite one, they're still strong. Go doesn't have the firepower Nur, and Nur doesn't have the kind of the touch, I guess you could call it, from the front, or the ability to win points from the front as much as go. But actually, when they were in their less favourable formation, they were still able to win points and create opportunities. I also think one other thing, when I was watching it, there was one rally, I think it was like 17-13, where the Koreans were diving all over the court. The Koreans had been kind of creeping back a little bit, and it felt like the momentum might be shifting. I remember thinking, if the Koreans can get 1 or 2 more points here, the Malaysians might tense up, and I think we might see the Koreans doing what they did in the quarterfinals and nicking it at the end. And there was this rally at 17-13 where both Koreans on the floor, and the Malaysians had basically an open court and missed it. And I thought, oh wow, okay, that's the point. That's what we call the luck. You know, when something like that happens, you can suddenly go, if you win that point from that situation, you're like, maybe it's our day. And if you lose it, you're like, oh no, it's not our day. But the Malaysians actually kind of, the next rally, and this is what kind of backs up what I said about when they were in their less favourable formation, like Nur from the front, he really held his own and played brilliantly. The next point, Nur Izzuddin finished a fantastic rally from the front. And then I was like, okay, the Malaysians have got this now. I thought that rally where the Koreans were scrambling and they somehow won it, the momentum had already looked like it was changing, and that point just cemented it further. But then to come back the next rally and play brilliantly and get another point back straight away from the Malaysians was absolutely brilliant. And they obviously then went out to win and were thoroughly well-deserved of the championship. Yeah, they were brilliant all week. Their semi-final against the Indians of Rankireddy and Shetty was just phenomenal. What a display that was. I don't think you could really chalk it up to the Indians not playing well. The Malaysians just played at an absolutely tremendous pace. And they kind of brought that into the final. The final was slightly different, but yeah, no. Really good from Go and Nur. I won't talk much more about both pairs. I think there's been plenty of questions about them. I'll save that for the Q&A. But yeah, no, they're my thoughts on that final. Right, okay, so moving on to the Q&A section. I haven't talked about absolutely everything in the first sections because there was so many really good questions. Again, this week you've outdone yourselves. Even more questions than last week, and if I'm honest, the questions I received are probably some of the best questions ever. Just really thought engaging, and so that I want to try and pick some of those and talk with them. There's some really interesting stuff. Starting with this one. Danish commentators talk about Sir being better with Kang. Your thoughts? Well, I actually messaged this guy, Viktor Dam on Instagram, because obviously before I could answer that, I needed to know what the Danish commentators actually felt. And he said, they talked about Kim not being consistent enough on the front court compared to Kang. He seemed a bit shaky at some points where he should be calm. Moreover, they talked about Kang taking more responsibility when games got close, and Kim maybe being used to mixed doubles, where Jung should close the net. He then went on to say that he doesn't quite agree, and that obviously there's only been 2 tournaments, so maybe they give it more time. And I also agreed with what he said. I don't necessarily agree what the Danish commentator said there. Let's start with the first point. So Kim not being consistent enough. Yeah, if you looked at the India Open final, Kim did make a lot of mistakes, especially from the front, at quite crucial times in that third game. However, if we go back 1 week to the Malaysia Open final, Seo Seung-jae was the player that was making a lot of mistakes, and it was Kim Won-ho that steadied the ship. So I'm not quite sure where they're getting this thought that Kim Won-ho makes a lot of crunch time mistakes, etc., etc. I think actually Kim Won-ho is one of the most steady and calm and cool and collected players. Yeah, in India in the final, yeah, he made some mistakes, but who doesn't? And I don't think that should be a knock on the fact that he is not steady enough or being able to stay consistent at the crunch times. If I'm honest, having watched them over the last 2 weeks, Seo Seung-jae's been the one that's actually been more up and down. When he's up, he's been like the best player on court, but he has had some down moments as well, for whatever reason. And it was in those down moments that I felt Kim Won-ho stepped up, and actually Kim Won-ho was getting better and better, I thought. Yeah, in the Open final, he wasn't his best. It happens to the best of players. But if you take that final out, the rest of the time I felt that he's actually very, very good. So the other one about Kim Won-ho, I guess they're kind of saying that he's not so good from the front of the court, I guess, or not calm enough, and that maybe because he's too used to his mixed doubles. Again, I'm not so sure about this, because Kim Won-ho won probably most of his points from the front of the court over these last 2 weeks, and there were so many times that if Kim Won-ho got on top of the net pretty much he finished the rally very, very quickly. And that's not something that I've just seen throughout the last 2 weeks. It's something that I've seen in his previous partnerships. It's something I've seen when I've watched matches from like Korean internal tournaments. And also what I would say is that in his mixed doubles, he's probably the one player that came forward far more than anyone. Yeah, mixed doubles, there are a lot of pairs where you could say that the female player was quite happy from the back. But you wouldn't say there was many where the men actively searched to come forward. And Kim Won-ho was that player. In fact, I think there's a video on YouTube where him and Jung Na-yeon are watching over their German Open final, I believe. And actually, they joked about how often Kim Won-ho would come to the front of the court in mixed doubles. So I think this whole thing that he's not so strong from the front or not calm enough or whatever from the front and all that kind of thing is, I wouldn't agree. In terms of overall, do I think Seo Seung-jae and Kang Min-hyuk are a better pair than Seo Seung-jae and Kim Won-ho? I think it's a bit too early to tell. Obviously, they've had a fantastic start, winning Malaysia and final India. That's pretty strong, but I think it's going to take a little bit more time to really kind of compare the two. Kang Min-hyuk and Seo Seung-jae had a great start to their partnership. I believe one of their early tournaments, they won the Korea Open and played a really good tournament there. And I remember being really impressed with Kang Min-hyuk's skills from the front and creativity. And yeah, I think overall, Kang Min-hyuk he's a different front court player to Kim Won-ho. Kim Won-ho is not necessarily a creative type, but he reads the game a bit better and he's able to finish the points more, whereas Kang Min-hyuk can maybe create more chances. That could maybe be a difference, but I think it's a bit too early to tell whether Kim and Seo are better as a partnership or Seo Seung-jae and Kang Min-hyuk are better than Seo Seung-jae and Kim Won-ho. If I had to go off my gut, I actually think Kim Won-ho and Seo Seung-jae are a better pair. I just think they obviously linked up really well here. I think that Kim Won-ho is a little bit more steady. I actually think he's going to be able to handle the bigger situations more. I know that's quite strong from the fact that Kang Min-hyuk is a world champion, but Kim Won-ho has shown that he can hold pressure in team events. He obviously is an Asian Games finalist. He's an Olympic finalist. I know that's in mixed, but he is. And I just think watching him, he's got ice in his veins. And I think, yeah, if we go off the India Open final where he was a bit shaky, yeah, you could say he's shaky. But over the other last part of the 2 weeks, he hasn't been. So I wouldn't agree with the Danish commentators with their input here. But I think we need to have more time to answer the bigger question of which partner is better for Seo Seung-jae. Do you think Aaron Cha and Seo Yik should be split and partnered with other players like other nations? That's an interesting question, actually. Personally, no, I don't think so. I think they're very settled within their partnership. They've obviously been very successful. They are former world champions, 2-time Olympic bronze medalists. I know they're not so good when it comes to winning regular world tour events, and I think as of late, they haven't been having the best of times. But I think splitting them up, that's a big decision. And I think one big factor is who would they partner? You'd have to do that, I think, within the Malaysian setup. They've kind of got quite a lot of established pairs already, or pairs that are slowly starting to find their way in the men's doubles discipline. So do you break one of those up as well as Aaron Cha and Seo Yik to potentially make a new partnership? It would be a big risk. Maybe this is the time to do it if they're going to do it, but I'm not so sure. Another factor would be that Bam, who would obviously be behind this decision, would have to kind of maybe potentially go with some bad results in men's doubles, because Go and Nur, who are obviously Malaysia's, and Ong and To, another pair, but Go and Nur are probably Malaysia's highest performing pair at the moment. They're independent, they're not part of BAM. So are BAM willing to risk splitting up their top pair to potentially make two new pairs that might not even have anything? I'm not so sure. It could be a good way. I guess one thing that could do it would be to bring on their younger players. There's a new pair from Malaysia, the World Junior Champions, that are very skillful, very good, and they're kind of two opposing players. So you could see that Aaron Cha and Seo Yik are also two opposing styles. So maybe, I can't quite remember their names, but the more skillful one could go with Seo Yik, and the other guy could go with Aaron Cha. That could actually create a similar dynamic to what Aaron Cha and Seo Yik are. Obviously, but they're very green, they're very fresh, they're only 18, 19 years old. That would be a big gamble and part of BAM to do it. It could be quite interesting and exciting, and I think in terms of styles, it could link up really, really well. But again, yeah, big risk, big gamble. Do I think they need to do it? I don't think they need to. I think this always comes into question when players are having a little bit of a downtime or having a bit of a bad patch. I think Arisa and Seung are definitely more than capable of getting back to where they should be. They're still a very good pair, obviously. I think they had a pretty good tournament in India as well. But I would be quite entertained by the idea of them splitting. And if they were to split, I'd actually say the new World Junior, like I said, the new World Junior Championship pair, which we're going to see for the first time on this World Tour scene. Well, not the first time, sorry, but we're going to see them, I think, in the Indonesian Masters this week. So I'm excited to see them. But yeah, maybe we could split that new young pair, and it'd be a great way to give them more exposure, more experience. But like I said, the risk is that it doesn't work. BAM then have no pairs under them that are doing well. And do you sacrifice Arisa and Seung, who are probably age-wise moving into, you could probably argue, the prime, to help out, bring on youngsters? There's a lot of pros and cons to it. You could bring on the youngsters. It could potentially produce two great pairs, but then the risks are you're splitting up your best pair. It might not come to anything. And also, the new young World Junior pair might actually, you've got to give them a chance to at least try and flourish on their own. They've proven they're great together. Let's see what they can do. So, do I think they do need to split? I don't think they need to. It would be quite exciting to see if they did. But let's see if that happens. I don't think it will, though, if I'm honest. I can't see it happening. Okay, this isn't really a question, but I thought it was quite interesting talking about it. I already talked a little bit about one half of it. Arisa Success and Yuta Struggles is an interesting topic. It is an interesting topic. I think what we have to consider when we're discussing these two is, I think it's a little bit easier to go for a player to go from top in the world mixed doubles to women's doubles. I do think that transition is a little bit easier. Also, Arisa's partner is someone with experience. She's older. She's had, before she partnered with Arisa, she'd had a pretty successful partnership and beaten Lu Shengshu and Tang Ning of all pairs with her previous partnership. So she'd already kind of had that experience and proven herself at the highest level. So obviously Arisa moving into that, there's always going to be some things that need to get figured out. But Arisa moved into a partnership, into a discipline that is a little easier to do, and with a partner that's more experienced. Whereas Watanabe has now been partnered with, obviously, Taguchi, someone that didn't even play mixed doubles as a junior, or if she didn't have her main success in it. She's a girls doubles player, and I've already spoken about that about Ramadhanti. The skill set is completely different. And then if you add to that she's so young, that she has got the pressure of having to partner Japan's most successful doubles player, that she has not much experience in mixed doubles, and that this would be her first full year as a senior player, that's a lot for her to handle. And so, yeah, it's an interesting topic, but I don't think we can kind of say, basically, I don't want to knock Maya Taguchi too much. I don't want this little section to be like, yeah, she's rubbish, but she isn't. She is actually good. But I think, like I said, there's a lot of factors going into this as to why this is happening. And yeah, I've laid them out, so I don't need to repeat them. In your opinion, how was Viktor Axelsen's performance in this tournament? Well, I think we have to kind of we have to break Viktor's performance in India into kind of two parts: the final and the lead up to the final. In the final, he kind of showed the Viktor of old. I think Steen Pedersen actually put it quite well, that at the Olympic Games, he kind of did the same. It wasn't quite as extreme, but he wasn't brilliant up to the final, and then played a really great final. Kind of showed when it got to the final, and he kind of relaxed into it and showed us what Viktor Axelsen is capable of. And he kind of did that in India. He was on edge almost the whole time in India, except for the final, where he looked kind of not Viktor of old, but he showed glimpses, and he just looked a lot calmer on court. That's definitely something. I mean, in the semi-final, we got carded for breaking his racket, and he just looked on edge. He looked on edge in a lot of his matches, actually. I think that part of that is that's Viktor's character. Even he said that, look, I'm human, I have emotions, and I think that's why he's also been so successful, is that he's so competitive, and you want so much that can spill over. And so sometimes we can see it as a negative, him getting angry and stuff, but also that's going to be fuel into what makes him so great. Also, we have to consider that his preparations haven't been great for this whole Asia tour, actually. You know, he's had injuries. He kind of prioritized other things over these tournaments, and I think he even knew that. I think he saw this final as a bonus. You know, every time he got through a round, he said, it's just a nice bonus that I can play an extra match. Victor's performance was up into the final. It was obviously good enough to win. It looked vulnerable and shaky at times, but he was able to kind of hold it together, and none of his opponents were able to really kind of capitalize on Viktor's down moments enough. And then in the final, he looked unstoppable, to be honest. I felt that Lee Chuk-yu was kind of following Viktor a bit. It was a little bit down to the fact that Viktor's quality to the rear court, his length, he did make some mistakes, but when he wasn't making those mistakes and the shuttle was in, it was in by, right in the corners, which put a lot of pressure. And I felt Lee Chuk-yu wasn't able to attack and win points as easily as he did when he played Viktor the previous week in Malaysia. Maybe that's because Viktor's just far more settled. First round compared to a final, and he had better preparations for this India tournament in terms of travel time compared to Malaysia. Just was a big factor. But Viktor's performance was okay. I don't think we can say he's back at his best. I do think we're going to see him probably winning another title or two. And for me, with Viktor, I think what's going to be the big interesting thing is going to see what level he brings to the All England. I know that's been his main target for the first half of this year. That's his main one. And I think he's definitely a player that's going to be focusing more on peaking for one or two events, not trying to... I don't think we're going to see him do the, win 6, 7, 8 tournaments in a year or get to that many finals. I think we're going to see him more sparingly, but it's going to be interesting to see what level he brings to the All England and also the World Championships later in the year. I think at the All England we're going to get a good indicator of the Viktor we could potentially see over this Olympic cycle. I think that's going to be interesting to see. Strategically, what should the other top 10 women's singles players do to counter Seung? A great question. Like I said, I told you there were so many great questions, but what should they do? That's a difficult one because Seung is a phenomenal player. She's so good at being able to adapt her game to whoever she's playing. She can kind of nullify anyone's strengths and be able to play to their weaknesses and to play to her own strengths. What should they do? I think we saw small signs of it actually in the semi-final from Tungjung, and that is that I think to be able to play and defeat Seung, you obviously have to be incredibly fit and strong and be able to play at a high pace throughout the whole match. You can't let your level drop. You can't shut off for a second. But I think a big thing that you do need is you need to have the skills to kind of like twist and turn it out of position. And when I say that, you need to be able to do that from the rear court and from the front of the court. If you have got enough skill, if you haven't got deceptions, then really you're not going to be able to defeat Seung. Her anticipation and ability to read what her opponent does is just far too strong, that if you aren't able to disguise that and play away from her, then really she's just going to either be able to rally you into oblivion or force you into mistakes. On top of this, it's not really a tactical thing, but you have to be mentally very strong to not fall into the trap of, okay, she keeps getting it back, I need to go more and more to the lines. That is far easier said than done. You need to have belief in your attack and your shot quality and be able to do it relentlessly. But on top of this, like I said, you need to have those deceptive skills. And also, like I said, that's kind of what Tungjung was able to do at times. I think Tungjung was the only player in India this week that actually made Seung look a little bit slow and actually looked a bit fragile in her agility around the court. It was only briefly, and Seung was still able to counter that. So Tungjung wasn't able to do it consistently enough. On top of this, I actually would say that you can't just have one or two deceptions in your game plan. I think you also need to be able to change your tactics and change the way that you're doing it. So not just changing the shots that you choose or the shots that you can do, but how you're doing them. So kind of, if you're always kind of doing like a double action down the line with the backhand, so you're trying to kind of focus on, if you're right-handed, onto Seung's forehand rear, you need to be able to then, for a few points, even if that's still working, go somewhere else and do it for a few points there. Because if you keep doing it, Seung is so good at kind of then finally figuring that out and being able to take it away from you, that you need to be able to keep that option open. And you then need to be able to do that with another corner and then keep that open another corner. So you need to be able to do it to pretty much everywhere. It's actually interesting. I can remember talking, well, I didn't personally, but hearing Kenneth Jonassen talk about, there was a particular match where he helped Peter Gader play Lin Dan. I can't remember what tournament. I think it was like the Swiss Open. We're going back a long time ago. But Peter Gader beat Lin Dan at that tournament. And what was really interesting was that what Kenneth said was that if Peter had a tactic that worked, and it worked for 5 points in a row, or it worked for a period of, say, 5-10 rallies, even if it was still working at the end of that, you'd have to change your tactics, even just a little bit, because if you didn't, Lin Dan would know it. He'd be able to count, he'd come up with a counter that quickly that then it would become useless. So then you could change it so that you could then go back to that same tactic a little later on. And I think with Seung, it's a little bit similar. You need to be able to obviously find, have the skill set to be able to do it, but to be able to find an area of weakness, even if it's just small, there isn't really major ones. Do it, but then change it before Seung has been able to anticipate and be able to come up with a counter to that, so that you can go back to it. So you have to have probably at least 5 or 6 different plans in your mind to be able to defeat Seung. And when I say this when Seung is on top form. Obviously, if she's holding injury or she's extremely fatigued, then it's not so difficult. But Seung in top form, that's what you'll be able to do. You have to be able to change your tactics consistently. You have to have deceptive skills, a lot of them, and you have to be able to you have to be mentally strong to be able to not just hang for a long time, but to not feel so forced into playing winners or going closer to the lines, and you have to be able to play at a high pace consistently. It's difficult. Yeah, that's why she is the number one, and why, you know, she's so difficult to beat. So there you have it, guys. That's enough talking from me. I've gone on for far too long as usual. I do apologize if you hate these long videos. I know some of you do appreciate them. Don't worry, in the comments section and attached this video will be timestamps, so you can just skip to whatever bit that you want to watch. Thanks for watching. If you have any further questions or comments, obviously get in the comment section. Let me know. I do like to reply to most people that leave me comments. If you like these sorts of videos and you like what I'm doing with the channel, then obviously do consider subscribing. Like the video, comment, share it, you know, do whatever you like with it. I just appreciate if you made it this far. I appreciate it if you only made it 1 minute in, to be honest. Thank you. And I will see you next week for the Indonesia Masters, a very special tournament, as it will be the final one for the absolutely legendary Indonesian pair of Mohamed Ahsan and Hendra Setiawan. Until next time, everyone.